Hey everyone! Today, we're diving into something really fundamental but super cool, how to have an actual two-way conversation with your computer using Python. Let's get right into it.
You know, when you think about it, anytime you use an app or a website, you're interacting with it, right? You click, you type, it responds. Well, at its very core, that whole thing is just a simple back-and-forth conversation.
And when it comes to programming, that conversation really just has two parts: input and output. Input is you, the user, giving the computer some information. And output is the computer talking back, showing you a result. You talk, it talks back. It's that simple. So let's start with the computer side of things.
To get the computer to say something in Python, we use a super important function called print. Honestly, just think of it as the computer's voice. Anything you stick inside those parentheses, it's going to display right on the screen.
So, for example, this bit of code right here tells Python to display the text, "Learning Python is fun." When you run it, boom, that exact phrase pops up. It's really the most basic way to get a response, and just make sure your code is even working.
But don't let its simplicity fool you. Print is actually pretty flexible. You can use it to display simple text, like we just did, or you could have it show the value that's stored inside a variable. You can even tell it to display multiple variables at once, or the answer to a math problem, all with that one little command.
Okay, so the computer has had its say. Now it's our turn to talk. How do we get the computer to just pause for a second and listen to what we have to say? For that, we use another key function, input. This is basically the computer's ear.
So when Python gets to a line like this one, it first displays that prompt you see inside the quotes, enter your name, and then it just stops. It patiently waits for you to type something and hit the enter key. And whatever you typed, it gets neatly stored away in that name variable.
But here's where a lot of us get tripped up at the beginning. See, the computer is listening, but it doesn't always get the meaning of what you said. It hears the sound, but it doesn't get the context. And this can lead to some serious translation issues.
Okay, so let's try asking for something like the user's age. This code prompts for an age and then stores it in a variable called age. Seems simple enough, right? You type in 25, and now the age variable holds 25. But there's a sneaky little trap hiding in there.
So what do you think happens if we try to do some math with that age variable? Maybe we want to figure out what your age will be in 5 years, so we try to calculate age plus 5. And the whole program crashes. So what gives? Why did that happen?
And here's the problem, plain and simple. The input function, by default, hears everything as just text, which in programming we call a string. So to Python, your input 25 isn't actually a number, it's a word, just like the word hello. And you can't add 5 to the word hello, right? And we can actually prove this. Python has this really handy little tool called the type function. If you wrap it around your variable like this, Python will tell you exactly what kind of data it thinks it's looking at. And for our age variable, it's going to come back and say class string, which is just Python's way of confirming, yep, that's a string. So, how do we fix this whole mess? We have to translate our input. We have to turn it from a word into a number so that the computer understands what we mean. We have to speak its language. And this process of changing a variable's type is called typecasting.
Luckily, Python gives us some really simple functions to do this. If we need a whole number, we use int parentheses. If we need a number that has a decimal point, like if we're dealing with money, we use float parentheses. Think of these as our personal translators. So the fix is to wrap our input function right inside the int function, just like you see here. What happens now is that the input function first grabs your input, say 25, as a string. Then the int function immediately translates it into the number 25. And just like that, problem solved. Now our code can do math.
All right, let's level up. What if we want to make our conversation a little more efficient? What if we want to grab a few pieces of information all at once? Well, you can totally do that. Welcome to the speed round.
The process is actually pretty straightforward. We'll ask the user for a few different values, maybe separated by a space. Then we use this awesome little method called .split. And just like the name suggests, it splits the input apart wherever it sees a space. Then we can take each of those pieces and assign them to their own variables.
Here's what that looks like in the code. This one line prompts the user, waits for them to type two numbers with a space in between, splits them apart, and puts the first number into X and the second into Y. But remember, .split also gives you back strings, so you'll still need to use int or float on them if you plan on doing any math.
So there you have it. You now have the basic, fundamental tools to have a real back-and-forth conversation with your computer in Python. Let's do a quick recap of the awesome toolkit you've just put together. You've got print, which is the computer's voice. You have input, its ears. You have your amazing translators, int and float, to make sure everyone's speaking the same language. You've got .split to make your conversations more efficient. And you've got your secret weapon, type, to check for any misunderstandings along the way.
With just this handful of tools, you can already build a simple calculator, a program that greets a user by name, or even a basic interactive story. You've officially learned how to start the conversation. So the only real question left is, what are you going to build with it?